In this video, we are going to do part one of the Mod 3.6 investigation. So we're not going to finish this, but we're going to start a little bit of it now, and then we will finish it the next class. Okay, so here they're talking about function relationships. So if you have some function rule here, it's the perimeter. We can think of the input goes into that rule, that machine, and our output is our perimeter or our f of s. So that's just reminding you that if our input is 8, we do 4 times 8, we get 32, and that would be the perimeter in inches. But what we're going to be talking about in this investigation is an inverse function. So if we call a function, we're going to name it that g of p. So if we have the perimeter, and if we input that, we would have to divide by 4 if we wanted the g function to give us a side length. Now, we note the inverse of function f with this little -1 notation. It is just notation. It does not mean any sort of power anything. And so instead of calling it g, if we wanted to relate it back to the function we saw up above, we could use the f, and that tells us what was the original function. It was to multiply by 4. Our new function, the inverse of f, would be to divide the perimeter by 4. Okay, so let's write down here what we know. Okay, so f of our side length is 4s. G of our perimeter is our perimeter divided by 4, and that will be a side length. Okay, so this is a perimeter, this is a side length. So when it says G of 32, what that means is that that was our perimeter, and they want to find the side length. Now let's think about our original function f. It went from input side, get out perimeter. This one inputs perimeter, gets out the side. Okay. So the way that the input and output of f and g are related is they are switched. So that input and output is switched. So let's look at the difference between I, and let's look at the difference between 1 and 2. Okay, so let's look at the difference here. The f function takes a side length of 5 and finds us the perimeter. So that is just 4 times 5, or 20. G takes a perimeter of 20, divides that by 4, and it comes back to the side of 5. If these two functions are inverses, that should happen. 5 becomes 20. Always work yourself from the inside out. And then 20 becomes 5 again. So we should expect in 2 the same sort of thing could happen. So let me show you. This is, we had a perimeter of 25. What's the side length? The side length is 25 divided by 4. Now I'm just going to leave it 25 divided by 4 so I don't have to really do the calculation. Because f takes the side length, which we found to be 25 over 4, and multiplies it by 4. Oh, goes right back to where it started. So inverses are really great because they, in a sense, the x becomes the y becomes the x. In this case, the side becomes the perimeter becomes the side. So that means,
Shardia Robinson, if you are in the building, your ride is here. Please come to the cafeteria. Shardia Robinson, if you are in the building, please come to the cafeteria.
Since these are inverses, the answer should be 9. Since these are inverses, the answer should be 36. So inverse functions, multiplication and division are inverse functions. Squaring and square rooting are inverse functions. Now you have to be careful because they have to be set up perfectly correctly to make that work, but that's kind of an elementary way of thinking what an inverse function looks like. Now let's go ahead and look at example 4. So here it has the standard formula for Fahrenheit given Celsius is the formula we see here. So let's highlight that formula. And then at A, it says determine the formula that represents the temperature in degrees Celsius in terms of Fahrenheit. So we need to take this formula, and instead of F equals some function of C, we want C to equal some function of F. So let's rearrange it. So we're going to subtract 32 from both sides. And then to get rid of the 9/5 C multiplication, we're going to divide by 9/5, which is the same as multiplying both sides by the reciprocal 5/9. So in that particular function, since C is a function of F, F is our independent quantity, and C is our dependent. Okay. So let's define a function g that represents the temperature in Fahrenheit degrees in terms of the same temperature measured in Celsius. So our original function is g of, so that would be g of c, and that's just the one they gave us to start with, is 9/5 c plus 32. And h, we're going to plug in f's this time, and that's the formula we found right here. So it'd be 5/9 f minus 32. Now I said earlier, be careful about how the inverses show up. Look what we have here. We have a multiplication by 5/9 and an addition. So here we do end up with two opposite things, a subtraction and a multiplication by the reciprocal. But watch that you follow order of operations when you rearrange like I did up here. So G of C is Celsius degrees converted into Fahrenheit. That's what the G function does. Our H function inputs Fahrenheit and it becomes Celsius. So, because look, H, our input is Fahrenheit, our output is the degrees Celsius. But G flips them around. So we have two nice little formulas there, and that allows us to solve for E. We'll do the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, let's start out with 1 and 2. G of 100, okay? So that means we had a Celsius of 100. So that's 9/5 of 100 plus 32. Well, 9/5 of 100 is 180 plus 32, which is 212. I believe that that's the boiling point of water, 100 points Celsius and 212 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe. It's been a while since I've taken science. Now let's go the opposite way for 2. We're using H. So our input is Fahrenheit now. So that's going to be 5/9 of 212 minus 32. Well, you have to follow order of operations. Do 212 minus 32. We get 5/9 of 180. 9 goes into 180 20 times. 5 times 20 is 100. Now that's degrees Celsius. So look what happened. This is the pair. G has the ordered pair 100 to 12. H has the ordered pair 212, 100. The X became the Y became the X. Because we have set these up so that these are inverses, H of G, so that would become 212, which we know became 100. So that answer is 100. This becomes 100, which we know then becomes 212. So they cancel each other out in a sense. So it's just the original input if they are inverses. So you'll notice, what did I do earlier? I took the original function and I rearranged it, solving for the other variable. Now, there are times where that won't work perfectly, but there are times where that's going to help us find that inverse function we're looking for. And so we're just going to do these last ones. We're going to rewrite, and then we will continue this on next class period, okay? So let's look at 5a. We want to solve this for x. So you are going to first add 8 to both sides. We get y plus 8 equals 2x. But we have to divide by 2. Put this entire side over 2, and that's a way that you can probably not make that mistake. You could also even put parentheses there if that helps that process. Now let's look at B. It says we want to solve for r. Now the first thing I notice is this entire side is divided by 4. So the opposite of division is multiplication. So let's multiply both sides by 4, and we get 4w equals r plus 19. And then we just need to subtract 19 from both sides. So we get 4w minus 19 equals r. So that would be the formula rewritten, r in terms of w. So the last one, C, this time our x is in 2 locations. The first one to get rid of really easily is to take that x and multiply it over. So let's make that nx equals 2x plus 6. Now it looks a little more like an equation that you want to solve for x. So we want to get the x's to one side and the plain things to the other. So let's take this one and subtract it and move it to the other side. So we're going to get nx minus 2x equals 6. Now, if we knew that n was, let's say, 7, 7x minus 2x is 5x. If we knew n was 10, 10x minus 2x is 8x. We don't know what n is. So to do kind of account for that is, instead, we can't add those together, factor out an x. So we have removed the x from here and the x from here. We have factored it out. And so we can check our work. If I redistribute that, I should get what we see right here on the page. Now, x is what we want to be by itself. That n minus 2 is not where we want it. So if we divide it off, we got it. So we're going to divide both sides by n minus 2. And we're going to get x equals 6 divided by n minus 2. So that is only the first part of this investigation. So don't turn in your Mod 3.6 investigation at this time. We're going to finish it later on. Okay, thanks.